I stared at the glowing screen, my hands shaking as the number refused to change. $36.14. That account held our daughter's college fund, the money her father and I spent 15 years building together. He said it was safe. He promised it was hers. But now, it was gone. Wired to a company tied to his mistress. My husband stole from his own child to impress another woman. And while I was still breaking, our 15-year-old daughter was already quietly building the evidence that would destroy him. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. I wasn't expecting to cry over a browser tab, but when I logged into the college fund account and saw the number $36.14, the silence in the room roared. I stared at the screen, my mind not catching up to what my eyes already knew. That balance couldn't be right. That account had $187,000 in it 2 months ago, maybe more. I refreshed the page, twice. I logged out, logged back in. Still $36.14. I felt the air shift in my chest, sharp, like falling from a height you didn't know you were standing on. My hand reached for the phone before I even decided to call. The bank's customer service line rang twice. Hi, yes, I'm calling about my daughter's 529 college savings plan. It's showing a zero balance. But that's not possible, I said. My voice sounded distant in my own ears, like it was coming from someone else. There should be over $180,000 in that account. The woman on the other end was polite, overly so. She asked for all the usual security questions, then placed me on a brief hold. I stood in the kitchen, phone pressed tight to my ear, every muscle tensed. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Normal things. And then, "Yes, ma'am, I'm seeing 3 withdrawals," the rep said. "Wire transfers, made to an account under the name MR Equity Holdings, LLC." I said nothing. Not because I didn't have questions, but because I suddenly understood exactly what had happened. The front door opened. Mark walked in, loosened his tie, and dropped his keys in the bowl like it was any other evening. He smiled when he saw me, a tight, practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What's up?" he asked casually. I didn't answer, just held the phone up. "MR Equity Holdings," I said flatly, eyes locked on his. "That name ring a bell?" His face didn't change, not immediately, but his body did. A barely perceptible shift in his shoulders, the kind of tension that betrays someone before their mouth ever does. "Lydia, it's okay. It's just a temporary investment," he said. Calm. Too calm. "The money's not gone. It's just moving. I'm working on a deal." "You took our daughter's college money?" My voice cracked around the word daughter. "It's going to be fine," he said, stepping forward. "I wouldn't do anything stupid. This is strategic. Short term." I hung up the phone without another word. A creak on the stairs. I turned. Ella stood frozen, one hand still on the railing, backpack slung over her shoulder. She must have just come in through the side door. "What money?" she asked. Mark started to speak, but she looked straight at me. "Mom." I opened my mouth, then closed it. "How do you say it? How do you unsay it?" Her voice was quieter this time, like she already knew. "You used my college money?" Mark stepped forward again. Hey. No one used anything. It's just being invested, that's all." "Invested?" she repeated, eyes going wide. "That money was for school. It was supposed to be safe. You said it was safe." "I didn't touch it until I knew it was a solid move," he said quickly. "There's a return coming. Probably in the next quarter. I'm protecting your future, Ella. By gambling it? She cut in. Without even telling me? I'd never heard her sound like that. Hurt. Betrayed. Old. Mark reached for her. She stepped back. No, I said, voice low. Let her be. Ella turned to me again, her expression unreadable now. You didn't know, did you? It wasn't a question. No, I said. I didn't. She stood there for one more beat. Then she turned and walked upstairs without another word. Her door shut a moment later, not slammed, just closed. I turned back to Mark. My voice was barely more than a whisper. How could you? I told you. It's temporary, he said again, as if repetition could make it true. I didn't say anything, just stared at the screen still glowing on the kitchen counter, the empty account. Then I heard it, the sound of a door. Not upstairs. The front. I ran to the window just in time to see Ella's car backing out of the driveway. No jacket, no call, no goodbye, just gone. It was after 11 by the time Ella came back. I heard the garage door roll up, slow and deliberate, like she didn't want to be heard. I didn't go out to meet her. Neither did Mark. We both just waited. She walked past the kitchen without a glance, up the stairs like a ghost, and shut her door with a quiet finality that landed louder than any slam. Mark sat across the table from me, arms crossed, jaw clenched. His dinner sat cold and untouched in front of him. Mine was still in the microwave, never even started. I need you to walk me through it, I said, not raising my voice. All of it. He exhaled like I was being unreasonable, like I was the problem now. It's a business deal, with a guy I've worked with before, private equity, solid return. He's put in triple what we have. We're talking 20% yield, minimum, over 9 months. I stared at him. Was that supposed to impress me? It's better than the market. Safer too. He's done this before. We're not the only ones in. And that's supposed to matter now? His mouth twisted like he wanted to argue but couldn't quite find the words. That made me nervous. Mark was a talker. Always had been. And now he was quiet. Carefully quiet. I want to see the paperwork, I said. He hesitated. That split-second pause was everything. I don't have it here. It's with him. We signed digitally. Then send me the files. He picked up his fork and poked at the roast chicken like it would help his case. I will. Just not tonight. I'm not waiting. You moved our daughter's college money without telling me. That's not a bad judgment call, Mark. That's betrayal. He flinched. It was small, but it was real. She'll get it back. All of it. And more. You don't know that. He slammed his fork down. God, Lydia. After all these years, do you really think I'd risk everything unless I knew? I think you already did risk everything. We locked eyes. His were tired. So were mine. The phone buzzed beside me. A text from Martha. Freeze the rest of the accounts. First thing tomorrow. Don't wait. I stared at the screen a moment, then looked back at Mark. I'm taking steps to protect what's left. His eyes narrowed. So that's it? No discussion? You're just locking me out now? You locked me out the moment you wired the money without a word. His voice dropped to a brittle whisper. Jesus, Lydia. What happened to us? Trust left with the money. He didn't speak after that. Just stood up, grabbed his plate, and walked it to the sink without eating a single bite. I didn't watch him go. I was listening. Upstairs, I heard the faint creak of a door. Ella's. Then silence. I followed the sound, stopping outside her room. The soft hum of her white noise machine masked the quiet, but I could hear the tension through the wood, like the walls were holding in the heat. Ella? I knocked softly. I'm here. If you want to talk. No response. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I swear to you. I would never have. Still nothing. I stood there for a moment longer, hand flat on the door. Then I turned away. Back downstairs, Mark had disappeared into the den, TV on low. Some rerun he wasn't watching. And upstairs, in the dark, behind that door, I knew she wasn't asleep. Ella wasn't the kind to lash out. She held things in, wore them like armor. And when she did act, it was quiet, surgical. She wasn't stewing. She was planning. Morning came without rest. The house had that heavy quiet, the kind that follows a night of words you can't take back. Mark had slept in the guest room, or maybe not at all. I didn't check. The sun cut through the kitchen blinds in slanted lines, painting everything too bright, too sharp. I sat at the counter, coffee untouched, the same email draft open on my laptop. To Bank Fraud Department. I couldn't bring myself to hit send. I just stared at the blinking cursor like it might blink back. Mark's tablet was on the counter beside the coffee maker, face down, charging. Normally, I wouldn't touch it. But when it buzzed once, short, deliberate, I looked up. A message preview glowed through the glass. Nina. Got the transfer, baby? For a moment, the letters didn't register. Then they rearranged themselves into meaning, and the air left my lungs like I'd been punched. Transfer. Baby. My fingers moved before my mind did. I swiped the screen open, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. There they were, a thread of messages that turned my stomach into stone. Nina, you promised it'd be in today. Mark, it's done, should clear by afternoon. Nina, you're amazing, you always deliver. And then a picture. Her, smiling, bare shoulders, hotel sheets. My hands trembled. I took screenshots, one after another. Message thread, timestamps, bank transfer image. Every detail. Evidence. Proof that I wasn't crazy. I set the tablet down carefully, like it might explode. The air felt thicker now. My chest ached, but I wasn't going to give the pain that satisfaction. When he came in a few minutes later, hair damp from the shower, he looked almost calm. Maybe relieved even. Morning, he said. I didn't respond. Just turned the tablet toward him. The message thread still glowed on the screen. His face drained of color. He froze, hand halfway to his mug. What is this? I asked quietly. He swallowed, eyes flicking to the screen, then back to me. Lydia, don't. My voice cracked on that one word, but I steadied it. Don't insult me with some half-truth. Who is she? He exhaled slowly, like someone deflating. Nina. She's a partner. On the investment. I laughed, short and bitter. Is that what we're calling it? She believes in me, he said, jaw tightening. In what I'm building. You haven't done that in years. The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. For a second, the room swayed. I gripped the counter just to stay upright. That's your defense? I whispered. You used your daughter's education fund to impress your mistress? It wasn't like that, he snapped, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Then what was it like, Mark? Romantic wire transfers? Pillow talk over stolen savings? He looked away. I'll pay it back. The chill that ran through me was worse than anger, worse than heartbreak, because I believed, in that instant, that he actually thought that fixed it. You'll pay it back? I repeated. You've gutted this family and you think a check erases that? I said I'll handle it. His tone was cold now, clipped, managerial, the voice he used in meetings when he wanted to end the discussion. I stepped closer, just enough to make him look at me. You don't get to handle anything anymore. That's when I heard movement, a soft shuffle in the hallway. Ella. She stood by the doorway, hair messy, face pale. She must have heard everything. She looked at her father the way you look at a stranger who just happens to be wearing someone you loved. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it sliced through the kitchen like glass. "No," she said. "You won't." Mark turned toward her, eyes wide, but she was already walking away. The silence that followed felt like an earthquake. Not loud, but deep, shifting something permanent beneath us. And for the first time, I knew this wasn't just about money. It was about the moment our family cracked open, and nothing inside looked familiar anymore. The bank was colder than I remembered, not in temperature, in tone. Glass partitions, polite smiles, and that quiet music meant to soothe while everything inside you burned. The manager, Joanne something, led me into a tiny office off the lobby. Beige walls, fake plant, and a framed quote about financial futures I couldn't stand to look at. She pulled up the account history with a few taps. The transfers appeared like bullet points on a timeline, clean, irrevocable. "All 3 transfers were authorized from your joint college fund account," she said, scrolling. "You and Mr. Carver are both listed as primary signers. No third-party interference. No breach of access." "So you're telling me," I said slowly, "he can drain our daughter's college savings without my knowledge, and that's legal?" She winced. "It's not ideal, but technically, yes, his signature was sufficient." I didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. I just stared at the screen. The numbers weren't just money, they were time, safety, promise. Now they were proof of how little protection I had. Joanne's voice softened. "I know this isn't what you want to hear, Mrs. Carver." "It's not what anyone should have to hear," I said, already standing. By the time I got back to the house, Detective Nguyen was already parked in our driveway. He was young, with eyes too calm for what I needed from him. He followed me inside, legal pad in hand, and we sat at the kitchen table that still smelled faintly of burnt toast and betrayal. Ella sat at the far end of the room, earbuds in, math textbook open. But I saw her watching us in the reflection of the microwave door. Quiet, focused. "I spoke with the bank," I said, sliding the screenshots toward him. "I have proof he sent money to another woman. Her name's Nina. I don't have a last name yet." Nguyen flipped through the images. "We see this more often than you'd think." That stung, because I wasn't looking for common. I was looking for outrage. Justice. "He drained $187,000, I said. "Our daughter's college fund. Can't you do something?" He looked sympathetic, but measured. "The issue is, it's a joint marital account. That makes it shared property." "He stole from his own child." "I understand," he said. "But unless there's coercion or fraud, and the bank confirms his access was valid, we're looking at civil territory, not criminal. It gets murky inside a marriage." I gripped the edge of the table. "So there's no way to prove he used that money for her?" "Only if the funds can be traced directly to an account in her name, a property transaction maybe, a gift deposit, something verifiable." Ella didn't flinch, but her pencil stopped moving. "Otherwise," Nguyen continued, "this becomes a divorce asset dispute, not theft." I stared at him. "So he can cheat, lie, drain our future, and unless he signed her name on the check, there's nothing I can do?" "Not nothing. Just not fast." I heard Ella's textbook close gently. She didn't say anything, but when I glanced at her, she met my eyes for half a second. And I saw it again, that same spark. The cold, quiet determination she inherited from me. Nguyen stood, gathering his notes. If anything changes, you find a lead, a transaction, anything, call me. Otherwise, your best bet may be financial discovery through divorce counsel. I nodded, throat dry. I walked him to the door, thanked him automatically, then leaned against the frame after he left, trying not to break. Behind me, Ella spoke for the first time all day. "What's her full name?" she asked. I turned. "Who?" "The woman," she said. "Nina." I hesitated. "I don't know yet." Ella picked up her laptop and stood. "I can find her." And just like that, the fight became ours. It was close to midnight when I noticed the light under Ella's door. The rest of the house was still. Even the fridge had stopped humming, like it was holding its breath. I knocked once, softly, then opened it. She didn't look up. She was cross-legged on her bed, hunched over two laptops, both glowing. A cold can of root beer sat unopened beside her phone screen lit with what looked like a spreadsheet. "Ella?" I said gently. "What are you doing?" "I'm not hacking," she said without looking up. "So don't freak out." That wasn't comforting. She tapped a few more keys, then dragged something from one window to another. Her face was calm, focused. There was something unnerving about how fast her fingers moved. "Okay," I said carefully, stepping inside. "So what are you doing?" "Public data," she replied. "Everything I have touched is searchable. No passwords, no firewalls, just connections." I pulled the desk chair closer and sat down, watching the screens. "Where did you learn all this?" She shrugged. "Mr. Talley's AP Comp Sci class, and YouTube, and boredom." She clicked over to a site I didn't recognize, some kind of business registration portal. At the top, State of Delaware Business Entity Search. "Look," she said. "There's an LLC filed 6 months ago under the name 9/11 Collective." I blinked. "What?" "9/11," she repeated, then raised an eyebrow. "Flip the numbers. It's not random. Mark's birthday is November 9th. She highlighted the email address attached to the registration. It was his. I leaned forward. My breath caught. "That's not all," she said, switching tabs. "That LLC is tied to a boutique site called 9/11 Atelier, fake women's clothing brand. Site looks real, but no customer reviews, no verified shipping info, no active SSL. It's a front." She pulled up another screen. "But here's where it gets interesting." A Stripe dashboard, blurred out except for a sample monthly transaction report she'd screen capped from a public caching tool. "I followed metadata links," she explained. "The payment processor is connected to a different LLC, this one under Nina Sutherland. But it routes through the fake boutique." I sat back, stunned. "You're saying Nina's laundering money through a fake store Mark helped her set up?" "Technically, I'm saying someone is moving untraceable funds through a shell business that matches the name of your husband's fake equity firm and routes to his girlfriend's private payment processor." But yes, she was 15. 15. "Ella," I said softly, "this isn't a game." She finally looked at me, really looked. "I know it's not." I stared at her. This girl I raised. This quiet, brilliant force I thought I was protecting. And now, she was out here in the dark, running forensic financial recon like it was a school project. "You can't play detective," I said, quieter now. "This could get dangerous. If you're wrong." "I'm not wrong." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You're scared," she said. "I'm not. Not anymore." And for the first time, I saw it. She wasn't just angry. She was steady, cold, like she'd stepped through a doorway and wasn't coming back. I'd spent weeks treading lightly, hoping to hold things together. But Ella, she was walking through the fire with her sleeves rolled up. I took a breath. If we go forward with this, we don't get to pretend anymore. She nodded once. We stopped pretending when he wired the money. She turned her laptop back toward her and clicked into a folder labeled Proof. I watched her drag a screenshot into it. Payment log, dated 2 days after the final college fund transfer. Amount $62,000. Recipient 911 Atelier. My chest tightened. You're building a case, I whispered. Ella didn't answer, because she already had. It started small, a tagged photo on Instagram. Mark's hand, unmistakable even in the blur, resting on Nina's knee under the edge of a white tablecloth. The caption was some pretentious quote about art and appetite, and the location tag was a trendy French bistro in the Pearl. I stared at it while Ella scrolled silently beside me, already taking a screenshot. 3 days later, they were in another photo. This time on Nina's public account. Rooftop. Sunset. She had her cheek tilted against his chest like a teenager in love. The caption was just a heart. It was like watching a stranger wear my life as a costume. The same restaurants Mark once took me to on anniversaries. The wine I used to pretend to enjoy. The city skyline we picked out our first condo against. All recycled now, only cheaper somehow, and with more filters. At work, I could feel it. The way people paused when I walked into the break room. The faux casual, "How are you holding up?" from coworkers who never asked me anything before. Sympathy had a scent, like wilted flowers in a hospital room. I hated it. Ella didn't talk much, but she was always collecting. I'd walk into the kitchen and see her with both phones open, one with Nina's socials, one with a notes app open, pasting links, adding timestamps. She didn't smile when she worked. She didn't frown either, just focused, cold. Everything leaves a trace, she muttered once, half to herself. Even arrogance. We were eating cereal for dinner when Martha stopped by. Just barged in the way she used to when we were all still pretending none of this was happening. She threw her tote on the floor and kicked off her boots. You seen the new post? Which one? I asked, not even looking up. Matching bracelets, she said, dropping onto the couch like she needed to be sedated. His and hers. Caption, something permanent. She made a gagging sound. He's burning bridges while standing on them. I snorted. That would imply he ever cared what was behind him. She was quiet a beat, then glanced at Ella, who was still in her digital foxhole. You ready? Martha asked gently. I knew what she meant. The legal separation papers had been sitting in a manila envelope on my nightstand for a week, untouched. I hadn't even opened it, just stared at the corner until the imprint of the crease burned into my mind. Henry had a friend, a lawyer. Quiet, discreet. She'd helped me get the paperwork drawn up without Mark knowing. No alimony request yet, no custody battles. Just a line drawn. I signed them that night, alone at the kitchen table, after everyone else had gone to bed. My hands didn't shake. I thought they might, but they didn't. Mark found out 3 days later. He came home earlier than usual, his keys slamming down on the hallway table like a warning shot. His voice carried before I even saw him. You're poisoning her against me. I didn't answer. Not right away. I was rinsing a coffee mug. I finished drying it before I turned around. I'm not turning anyone against you, Mark, I said, calm as I could manage. You did that yourself. He laughed, bitter and sharp. She's a kid, Lydia. You think she understands anything about this? She understands more than you ever gave her credit for, I said, stepping into the living room, narrowing the space between us. She knows what she saw, what you did, what you keep doing. Mark's jaw twitched. You always think you're so righteous? You think this makes you a victim? No, I said. It makes me done. He looked around like he was suddenly unsure of where he'd walked into. Like this house had shifted shape without him knowing. You think this is over? He said, his voice low now. No, I said, holding his gaze. I think this is the start. From the hallway, Ella's door opened. Slowly, she walked out, phone in hand. Hi, Dad, she said flatly. Nice bracelet. Mark turned, startled. She snapped a photo. No smile. Just one click. She didn't say anything else. Just walked back to her room. And he watched her go. As if realizing for the first time that he'd lost something he couldn't buy back. Ella didn't talk about what happened that night. Not after the photo, not after Mark's slam door echoed down the hallway like a threat. But I could see something in her had hardened. The next morning, I found her in the garage, sitting cross-legged on an overturned crate, laptop balanced on her knees. Her hoodie sleeves were pushed up, fingers flying across the keyboard like she was scoring a symphony only she could hear. You're up early, I said, half expecting silence. I never went to bed, she replied, eyes still locked on the screen. I moved closer. She was logged into the boutique's site, 911 Atelier, but the back end this time. The code she was staring at looked like gibberish to me. Blocks of CSS, JavaScript, 1,000 tiny wires connecting one fake thing to another. There's no checkout security, she murmured. No reCAPTCHA, no multi-step verification. They didn't even obfuscate the storefront paths. Is that bad? For them, yeah. She tapped a key. It's not a real store, it's a shell. One landing page leads to 5 dummy product pages. They redirect back to the home page on a loop. Okay, but what does that mean? It means they want traffic to look real, but they're not actually selling anything. The clicks matter more than the product. That's when she showed me. She'd set up a mirror, a shadow copy of the site, using her school-issued coding environment, and a few tools I didn't ask too much about. Anyone who clicked through the fake boutique would now ping her version of the site first. It logs the IP address, location, timestamp, and referrer header, she explained. Basically, I see who's really visiting, not the bots, the buyers. I stared at her. Is that legal? She shrugged. It's all public-facing data. I'm not accessing anything they didn't volunteer by clicking. A list was already populating. Lines of code, each one time-stamped and tagged. Wait, she said suddenly, squinting. She clicked into one entry, then another. There, that's their house IP. And this one's the downtown condo. Cross-referencing the router identifiers confirms it. What are they clicking on? I asked. Test purchases, from the same fake product page, using a joint visa ending in 4332. I froze. That's his card, She nodded. You're still a joint user on it, which means you can request statements. The air in the garage felt tighter now, like the walls had crept inward. Ella, if they find out you're doing this, they won't. You don't know that, I snapped, sharper than I meant to. She looked up. Her expression wasn't angry. It was calm, dangerous. If it backfires, she said quietly, we'll already have proof. That's the point. I sat down on the crate beside her, my heart doing something frantic in my chest. I wasn't sure if it was fear or awe. Maybe both. A few days later, I did something I swore I wouldn't. I called Detective Nguyen. Not officially. Not even from my phone. I used Martha's burner and met her in the parking lot behind a bakery she liked on Hawthorne. Nguyen was in plain clothes. She looked tired, but not surprised. "I can't touch this unless it's brought in through official channels," she said. "But off the record? Show me what you've got." I handed her the thumb drive. Ella's tracker data, PDF'd purchase logs, metadata screenshots. She plugged it into a little tablet she carried and scrolled in silence. After a minute, she let out a low whistle. "This is tight work. Clean, smart." I hesitated. "It's my daughter's." She glanced at me. "How old?" "15. Guyen gave a low laugh. "Remind me not to cross her." As I drove home, the sun was setting in strips of pale gold, but everything inside me felt sharpened to ice. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something stranger, precise. Revenge wasn't rage anymore. It wasn't screaming in the shower or slashing photos in the attic. It was careful, surgical, a needle in a vein. When I got home, Ella was already upstairs. Her bedroom light was on. I called softly up the stairs. "Want something to eat?" No answer. I climbed halfway up and stopped when I saw her door slightly open. She was sitting at her desk, headphones on, eyes locked to the screen. And on that screen, paused mid-frame, was a Zoom recording. Nina, talking, laughing. In the corner, a bank interface, active, recording overlay blinking red. Ella didn't see me. She pressed play. It happened on a Wednesday. One of those brittle, too bright mornings where the sky looked clean, but everything beneath it felt grimy. I was folding laundry in the living room, half watching an old true crime rerun on mute, when I heard Ella's voice from upstairs. She posted it. I didn't even need to ask who she was. I found Ella already screen recording on her phone, thumb hovering like she was holding a detonator. She tagged it this time, she said, eyes laser-focused, on her public story. I leaned in just as the video looped back to the beginning. Nina, all lip gloss and angles, stood in front of a blush pink wall with racks of dresses behind her. The caption, scrawled in a brush font, read, "New project dropping soon, thank you. MG, Investments, see sponsored Deutsche Growth." Ella paused the video and zoomed in. "That's it. That's Mark's firm. Or, what's left of it." She just name-dropped the Shell LLC in public. I stared at the screen. My heart kicked once in my chest. A reflex like it knew what this meant before my brain caught up. "You got it recorded?" Ella gave a dry laugh. 3 versions. 1 screen record, 2 stills. With timestamps, metadata, location data. She left geotagging on. I didn't wait. I pulled out my phone, my real one this time, and texted Detective Nguyen the screenshot. No explanation. Just the image. Nguyen didn't respond right away. Long enough for me to start pacing, for Ella to start collecting backup files in her proof folder, for the sky to change shades through the blinds. Then my phone lit up. 1 line. "That's our smoking gun." I exhaled too fast and had to sit down. Nguyen followed it with a second text. "Misuse of employer funds. Enough for internal audit, maybe more. Sit tight." I showed Ella, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself a half smile. Small, quiet, but real. By noon, the first wave hit. Martha called me from her office, breathless. "I don't know what you did, but Mark just got pulled into a closed-door HR meeting. Doors slammed, people watching through the glass. He looked like someone kicked his dog." I didn't say anything. Just pressed the phone tighter to my ear, soaking it in. "Do you think they'll fire him?" she asked. "I think," I said, "they're realizing who he really is." By late afternoon, the second wave came. Nina's Instagram, gone. Not just the story, the entire account. Deleted. Wiped clean. Ella checked from 3 different devices to be sure. She's scared, Ella said. Someone tipped them off. Maybe HR called him, I said. Or maybe Nguyen pulled a thread. Either way, Ella said, they're scrambling. We sat on the couch, side by side, staring at the blank space where Nina's account used to be. I should have felt elated, triumphant. But what I felt was something softer, heavier, relief. The first real crack in their perfect lie had finally shown. Not a rumor, not a hunch. A documented mistake, a public trace. And the moment it hit, they ran. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been wound until I felt my shoulders drop. My jaw unclench, my lungs open. It didn't fix everything. Mark was still my legal husband. Ella still flinched at loud footsteps. Our house still echoed differently now. Emptier, like it was waiting for something else to collapse. But for the first time, I breathed. Really breathed. And then the doorbell rang. Ella looked at me, alert. I checked the clock. 5:42 p.m. No one we knew ever showed up unannounced anymore. I opened the door slowly. It wasn't Mark. It wasn't Martha. It was a man in a crisp gray blazer, holding an envelope. He gave a tight smile. Lydia Harper? Yes. He handed me the envelope. You've been formally served. Mark Gregory Harper is filing a motion for emergency temporary custody of Ella. My breath caught. I turned to look inside the house, toward Ella, now standing, pale and still at the end of the hallway. And just like that, the crack we'd made turned into an earthquake. He showed up the next morning. No call, no warning, just the sound of the front door unlocking, like he still belonged here. Ella was in the kitchen when it happened. I heard the sound of her cereal bowl hitting the counter too hard, then her footsteps retreating fast toward the hallway. I was halfway down the stairs when I saw him. Mark, standing in the entryway, face red, jaw clenched, blazer off like he wanted to fight something. Or someone. You turned her into a spy, he snapped. No preamble, no hello. You weaponized our daughter against me. She's not a weapon, I said, forcing my voice steady. She's observant. There's a difference. She's 15, he roared. And she's crawling through servers and financial logs like it's some kind of game? You think that's healthy? Better than watching her father launder money with his mistress and lie about it over dinner. That stopped him, but not for long. His hands curled into fists at his sides. You don't get to stand on a soapbox when you're in the process of stealing everything I've built. I laughed, cold and flat. What you built was a fraud, Mark, and you used my name to do it. He didn't deny it, just stepped closer, lowered his voice. You think it's over? You think Nguyen's little audit scare is the end of this? You think I don't have contingencies? My stomach dropped. I have access to 3 more accounts, he said. You miss those. I can pull everything before the courts even touch it. Panic sparked behind my ribs. He grinned, seeing it. You still use the same recovery email for all your banking. You made this easy. From the hallway, Ella's voice cut in, low and precise. Except I changed the recovery last week. Mark turned. She stood at the edge of the room, arms crossed, her phone in one hand, calm, unblinking. What? The shared iPad in the den, she said. You saved your credentials in Chrome. I exported them. Reset your logins. Set up 2-factor. You're out. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked genuinely stunned. You stole my... protected our assets. I snapped. It's not theft if you're using funds tied to a fraudulent LLC to hide income from your own wife and the IRS. That money's mine. His voice cracked on the word. I earned it. You buried it, I said. In Nina's name. Through fake boutique sites and test transactions. And now, thanks to Ella, I've got logins, locations, IP logs, time-stamped proof. Mark's eyes darted, the look of a man whose storylines were slipping faster than he could grab them. He opened his mouth again, but the words never came. Instead, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked it, and something changed in his posture. He looked up at me with a new kind of rage, colder, strategic. You want to talk about proof? He said, stepping backward toward the door. Let's see how your little crusade holds up after this. He left without another word. 2 hours later, the knock came. Detective Nguyen, this time in uniform, not plain clothes. Her expression was tight, not angry, just bracing for something. Need to talk, she said, stepping inside. She opened a manila folder, slid it onto the kitchen table. Inside, a printed complaint, time-stamped, signed by Nina Sutherland. Allegation, harassment. Target, Lydia Harper. She's saying you threatened her. At her office. Used Ella to spy on her movements. I felt the blood drain from my face. I've never even been near her office. I know, Nguyen said quickly. There's no footage, no witness confirmation. But the claim is on record, which means we have to treat it seriously. I gripped the back of the chair. This is them. It's retaliation. Nguyen nodded. They're escalating, which means you don't. Stay smart, not loud. Let them show their hand. Ella didn't say anything. She just stood behind me, stiff and quiet, her arms crossed tighter than before. Nguyen gathered the folder. Get ahead of this, Lydia. Document everything. Time, dates, even what you eat for breakfast. If she keeps lying, we'll catch it. She paused at the door. But you need to know, this is how people fight when they know they're losing. As soon as she left, I turned to Ella. We're not safe, are we? She looked me in the eye. No. But we're ready. And then her phone buzzed. One alert. She read it and her expression changed, drained but sharp. They're trying to transfer the condo deed, she said, to Nina's name. And just like that, it wasn't just financial, it was war. I didn't notice the shift at work right away. It was subtle. A missed CC. A coffee invitation that never came. But by Thursday, the silence had a rhythm. Someone had told someone. And now my name, or some twisted version of it, was threading its way through cubicles and Slack threads and passive glances that slid off me like oil. At lunch, I sat alone. The usual women from HR, the ones who used to ask about Ella's swim meets, kept their heads down, pretending they hadn't seen me walk in. My sandwich sat untouched. I caught one whisper just before I left the break room. Not surprised. You marry a guy like that, what do you expect? I didn't flinch. I just walked out. But it burned. I told myself it didn't matter. That the truth was still unfolding and the silence would break eventually. But the lie was louder. More entertaining. More viral. And then Ella came home from school with a tear in her backpack and a look I hadn't seen on her face since she was 9 and got lost at the county fair. She tossed the bag onto the floor. Someone taped one of Dad's mugshot memes to my locker. I felt the blood rise before I even stood up. They called me money laundering baby in chem, she added, pulling her hoodie tighter. Real original. I didn't have words, just the ache in my throat that made my voice shake when I finally managed. Do you want to transfer schools? No, she said instantly. They don't get to push me out. But later, when I walked past her room and saw her staring blankly at a wall, Headphones on with no music playing, I cracked. That night, I stayed up past midnight reading through the custody paperwork. I pulled up the draft motion for our financial defense, opened it, hovered over the delete key more than once. If this dragged on, it would consume her. I could survive another scandal. I'd already survived worse. But Ella shouldn't have to. By 1:30, I had a draft message to Nguyen open, one click away from withdrawing the case. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't hear Ella come down the stairs. She sat across from me at the table, hair mussed, eyes tired but clear. "You're pulling it, aren't you?" I minimized the screen, guilty. "It's too much. The school, the neighbors, your friends. I'm not pulling out," she said steady. "So why are you?" "Because I can take the hit," I said. "You're still a kid." "No. I'm your kid." She leaned forward. "And you're the one who taught me not to let liars rewrite stories." I blinked at her. She held my gaze. "You told me that when I got accused of cheating on the geometry quiz. Remember? You said the truth doesn't matter if you're too afraid to say it out loud." It felt like being held accountable by my own legacy. "I just don't want to watch you suffer for my mistakes," I whispered. "Then don't let him win," she said. "That's the mistake." We worked through the night. She organized the timeline. Every screenshot, every redirect log, every flag transaction. She built a visual tracker in Google Sheets so clean even an auditor could follow it. I added the bank statements, the texts, the timeline of the condo transfer attempt. All of it under one heading: Pattern of Intent, Financial Misconduct by Mark G. Harper and Nina Sutherland. By dawn, it was 87 pages long. I emailed it to Nguyen with the subject line, "Formal Submission, Harper Investigation." At 7:11 a.m., Nguyen wrote back, "Got it. This is gold. Consider it entered." I leaned back, finally exhaling. Ella hadn't spoken in a while. She'd curled up in the armchair, blanket over her knees, laptop still open on her chest. I knelt beside her, wrapped my arms around her shoulders. "You're saving us both," I said. She didn't say anything, just leaned into me, and then her phone buzzed. Again. She checked it. Froze. "Mom," she whispered. "He's filed an emergency order to liquidate our joint trust." My breath caught. "They're trying to erase everything." It happened at 6:43 a.m. on a Tuesday. Ella and I were still in our pajamas, hunched over mugs of reheated coffee and tea, when her phone lit up with a news alert. I saw her eyes widen before she turned the screen toward me. "Breaking. SPD raid. Luxury condo in Belltown. Business fraud suspected sources. Multiple forged LLC documents and tax records recovered." She tapped the link, and a live stream flickered to life. Shaky phone footage from a neighbor's balcony. 2 officers, 1 plainclothes detective, a lockbox being carried out in gloved hands, and behind them, standing off to the side in a black hoodie and messy bun, Nina. No filters, no smile, just stunned and small in the glare of real light. Ella whispered, "That's her building." I watched in silence. The video cut to a news anchor overlay, then a reporter, standing near a line of yellow tape, reading names from a just-released warrant. Linked to Nina Sutherland and Mark Gregory Harper, alleged partners in a suspected multi-entity laundering scheme involving digital storefronts and shell companies registered across multiple states. My breath locked in my chest. They'd said his full name. I clutched the edge of the table, staring as the footage replayed. Mark's name, Nina's name, both under the banner of a citywide financial crimes investigation. It was out now. No more secrets. No more private whispers in courthouse hallways. No more edited bios and blurred timelines. The story was public. Real. They found the spreadsheets? Ella said quietly. Nguyen just texted. Nina had a laptop open on the kitchen island. Everything was there. Product IDs, shell business routing, payout accounts. All under MG. Investments. And the trust? I asked. Ella nodded. Frozen as of this morning. Court ordered. I sat back in my chair, the room suddenly too quiet. I wasn't shaking, I wasn't crying, I was just still. Like my body didn't quite know what to do now that the war wasn't hypothetical. An hour later, the second wave came. Mark's office released a statement. Short, clipped. Effective immediately, Mark G. Harper has been terminated from his position due to ongoing legal investigations. No defense. No comment. Just terminated. Ella scrolled without speaking, her lips pressed tight. Every feed we checked said the same thing in different fonts. Seattle entrepreneur couple, luxury scam, boutique fraud, tech daddy laundering love triangle. Nina's Instagram? Gone. Her website, too. The DNS pointed to an empty registrar. It was like someone yanked her entire persona out by the roots. Gone. Ella turned the TV on just in time for the noon broadcast. There they were again. Blurred mugshot of Mark, pixelated photo of Nina from an influencer panel 2 years ago, now side by side like a wanted couple. The anchor's voice was smooth, practiced. Accused of orchestrating a multi-year laundering operation through online fashion storefronts. Harper, a former executive at a local venture firm, is believed to have funneled investor money into fake shell entities, some of which were tied to Sutherland's digital branding business. The words became background noise. All I could hear was the space around them. Ella curled up next to me on the couch, resting her head against my shoulder. We didn't speak for a while. Eventually, as the footage looped again, she muttered under her breath, almost like a prayer. Justice looks better than apology. I didn't laugh exactly, but the breath that escaped me came close, soft, real. The first in months that didn't taste like bitterness or regret. Yeah, I whispered. It really does. We sat there like that, not triumphant, not gloating, just steady, just together. I didn't feel clean, but I felt cleared, like the smoke was finally starting to lift. Then my phone buzzed. One new message. From an unknown number. No name attached. You think this is over? You've got no idea who Mark really works for. I stared at it. Ella looked up at me. What is it? I turned the phone toward her, and just like that, the shadows shifted again. The knock came just after sunset. Not a pound, not like before, but soft, hesitant. I knew it was him before I opened the door. Mark stood there in a wrinkled blazer and jeans too clean for someone who'd been sleeping anywhere uncomfortable. His hair was unkempt, but it was his eyes that stopped me. Not angry, not smug, just hollow. I just want 5 minutes, he said. I didn't say yes, but I stepped aside. He sat on the edge of the couch like a guest, elbows on knees, head bowed. I didn't sit. I stood by the armrest, arms crossed. The air between us was no longer shared. It was contested. I don't have a job, he started. HR blackballed me. Even the companies that used to chase me won't return a call. I said nothing. Nina disappeared, he added quieter. Told the police I manipulated her, that she had no idea what the accounts were. She left me with the mess, and the lawyers. Still I waited. He looked up. Lydia, I didn't come to threaten you. I came to say I'm sorry. That word used to mean something. Now it felt like a knockoff, a cheap version of what he should have said a year ago. She didn't even like me that much, he said, his voice breaking around the edges. She liked the idea of me, the access, the money, but I was just. He paused. I was just convenient. I let that land. Let him sit in it. I wasn't looking for love, he said. I was just looking for someone to admire me again, to make me feel like I mattered. I crossed the room slowly, leaned against the fireplace. So you stole that admiration from your own child? He looked away. She used to believe in you, I said, before you started lying, before she had to protect me from you. He pressed his hands together, fingers interlocked like a man praying. But I don't think Mark believed in anything anymore. I don't expect forgiveness, he said, but I thought maybe I could still come home, just for a little while, just until the court stuff. I shook my head once. Final. No. He blinked. But you're not coming back here, I said. This isn't your sanctuary anymore. It's Ella's, and mine. He didn't argue, just sat there, as if the idea was only now starting to settle in. I'll meet you halfway, I said, for Ella's sake. But that's it. That week, the court handed down an interim judgment, partial restitution, while the full investigation unfolded. Half of Mark's severance was to be rerouted into Ella's college fund immediately. He didn't fight it. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe part of him knew it was the closest thing to a legacy he'd get now. The car came next. The black Tesla, the one he bought after his second bonus, the one he never let me drive. I found the title in the fire-safe box in the closet. Turns out I was still listed on it. I sold it within 3 days. Used it to pay Nguyen's legal retainer and the forensic accountant who would finalize the asset tracing. Ella didn't celebrate, but the day I handed her the updated college savings breakdown, she looked at the number, then at me, and nodded once. It wasn't revenge in her eyes. Not anymore. It was peace. That night, we didn't talk much. We ate soup on the couch, watching reruns of a show we used to love back when our lives still felt ordinary. As we cleaned up, Ella turned to me and said, "He wanted to feel admired?" I nodded. She shrugged. He should have tried being admirable. And for the first time, I knew she'd be okay. We both would. But just as I started the dishwasher, a new email pinged in. Subject line, Federal Subpoena, Request for Interview. Sender, U.S. Attorney's Office, Western District. I stared at it, because apparently, we weren't done yet. It had been almost 4 months since the last hearing. The headlines had faded. The subpoenas, the lawyers, the cold calls from journalists. They'd all died down into background noise. Our world had quieted, not healed exactly, but settled into a kind of functional scar tissue. Ella had gone back to swim practice. I'd started working remotely part-time. The mornings were slower now. We said, "I love you," more often. We remembered how to laugh. But there was still a piece of her I couldn't quite read, something she was always working on in the background. She'd spend hours at the dining room table with her laptop, headphones in, expression unreadable. I didn't push. I'd learned by now. Ella didn't hide out of secrecy. She hid out of purpose. Then, on a Friday evening in late spring, she called me over. "Can I show you something?" She turned her screen toward me. At first glance, it looked like any polished nonprofit landing page. Soft blue palette, serif font, the kind of clean, trustworthy aesthetic made to draw you in gently. Across the top, the grant promise. I tilted my head. "I haven't heard of this. What's it for?" She didn't answer right away. She clicked through the tabs. Apply now, about the fund, our story. She opened the last one. A few paragraphs of plain text. No names, no cities, no dates. Just this. My mother lost everything for telling the truth. I watched it all. The gaslighting, the legal war, the public shame. And still, she protected me, taught me how to fight with proof, not fire. This fund exists for students with courage, for kids whose families were torn apart by financial betrayal and who never stopped showing up to school, to life, to themselves. We don't ask for your GPA. We ask for your story. I couldn't speak. Ella clicked the support tab. A donation tracker sat in the corner. 4112 was raised. My hand went to my mouth. Is this? She nodded. Started with a blog post. Anonymous. Just the outline of what happened. People started sharing it. A few moms sent messages asking how they could help. So I built the site. I sat down slowly. Ella, I didn't want it to be about me, she said. So I used a fake name. Everything runs through a local nonprofit as a fiscal sponsor. It's all legit. My chest tightened. Not with fear, not this time, with pride so sharp it almost hurt. You used our pain for good, I said, blinking fast. She looked at me then, steady, unflinching. Pain's useless if it doesn't help someone else. I reached out, brushed a piece of hair from her cheek. She didn't pull away. Later that night, after she went to bed, I stayed up scrolling through the testimonials. Applicants had started submitting their stories about embezzling parents, silent courtrooms, fake businesses, reputations burned down without warning. And in every comment section, anonymous donors replied, "We see you. Keep going. This isn't the end." One name caught my eye, a donation made that morning. No message attached, just initials, DN. Detective Nguyen. I closed the browser, just sat with it. Somewhere out there, our story, or the shape of it, was becoming someone else's beginning. And Mark? He wasn't mentioned on the site. Not once. No need. But I knew he'd seen it. The next morning, I found him. Not in person, not in email or text, but buried in a Reddit thread about the scholarship. A comment under the post. Wish someone had taught me the value of honesty when it mattered. The username was an old one, from the early 2000s. One he'd used when we were first dating. I showed Ella. She read it twice, then passed the phone back wordlessly. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. But she stood a little taller that day. And when she left for swim practice, she wore her hair in a braid, the same way she did when she was little. Unbothered, unshaken, reclaimed. And me? I opened a new tab, typed in, how to establish a 501c3 foundation. Because maybe the legacy wasn't just hers. Maybe we were building it together. It came on a Thursday morning, the kind of morning that felt like spring had finally earned its keep. The windows were cracked open, birds arguing in the hedge, and Ella was halfway through a bagel when her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, froze, then read, and reread. "What is it?" I asked, drying my hands on a dish towel. She turned the screen toward me. Subject: Congratulations. You've been awarded a full scholarship. University of California, Santa Cruz, Department of Computer Science. I stared at it, blinking, as if my brain couldn't quite absorb what I was reading. Then I looked up at her. Her mouth twitched. Not a grin. Not yet. Just that stubborn upward curve she'd always tried to hide. "They gave you a full ride?" I whispered. She nodded once. "Tuition, housing, even a stipend." They read my grant promise post. Said it made them want to fund resilient problem solvers. And just like that, I felt the air shift again. This time, not like a warning, but like a door opening. I hugged her, hard. She didn't flinch. That weekend, I redecorated the living room. Nothing drastic. No big renovations. Just soft whites, warm grays, touches of sea glass blue. The deep wine-colored curtains came down. The black leather couch went on Craigslist. The old family photos, the ones with Mark in them, stayed in a box in the attic. When Martha stopped by the next week, she stood in the middle of the room with her hands on her hips. "Well, damn," she said. "You girls moved on with style." Ella smirked from the kitchen. "You two should start a private eye firm," Martha added, tossing her purse on the couch. "Hackers with hearts." I laughed. A full laugh, not the ghost of one. "No, we just pay attention." The final hearing came 2 weeks later. Superior Court, downtown Seattle. Just another overcast day pretending to be dramatic. Ella and I walked in together, but she didn't sit with me. She had her own seat at the plaintiff's table. Her own folder of evidence. Her own calm, contained posture. Mark arrived separately. He looked older, smaller, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks, but still couldn't admit he was tired. His suit was clean, but nothing else about him was. He didn't look at Ella. Not once. Judge Ralston entered and took her seat without much fanfare. But her tone, when she addressed the room, carried weight. "I've reviewed all documents submitted, including the forensic analysis, donation trail from the scholarship fund, and the digital security logs." She paused, looked toward Ella. "And I want to note for the record that Miss Harper's work in gathering this evidence was, in both precision and legality, exemplary." Ella didn't move, just gave a polite nod. Poised, steady. The judge glanced over the room again. "Given the scope of financial misconduct and the risk posed to the minor during the events in question, I am ruling in favor of the full protective order. Custodial rights will remain with Mrs. Harper." Mark didn't react, just lowered his gaze, like he already knew. The judge leaned slightly forward. "And I hope the defendant understands this isn't simply about money. It's about trust, integrity, and the cost of destroying them." She closed the file. Court adjourned. And then, something I never expected happened. The courtroom, not packed, just a dozen or so attendees, began to clap. Not loud, not performative, just a quiet, respectful sound that filled the room like breath returning to a chest. Ella didn't look surprised, just satisfied. The kind of satisfaction that isn't about winning. It's about surviving with your dignity intact. Afterward, we stepped into the hallway. I slipped my arm around her shoulder, and for a moment we didn't say anything. Then she looked up at me. "Ready for Santa Cruz?" I smiled. "I've already got the paint swatches for your dorm." She laughed finally, like a girl with a future instead of a case file. But before we walked out, I turned once, back toward the empty courtroom, where Mark still sat, alone. And in that moment, I didn't hate him. But I didn't pity him either. He watched his daughter walk away. And I knew he understood what we'd done. We hadn't just left him. We'd rebuilt without him. It was just numbers on a screen. But I stared at them like they were a sunrise. Total balance, 148,302.67. Ella's college fund. Rebuilt from scorched earth. Half from court-ordered restitution. The rest from the scholarship fund's private donations, matched grants, and a quiet but generous donation from a nonprofit that found the grant promise and reached out last month. I scrolled through the account details once, then again, verified the transfer dates, labeled each line item like a ritual, the new kind, the kind that restores instead of erases. Behind me, the floor creaked. Ella stepped into the room, hair damp from her shower, towel looped around her neck like a swimmer on meet day. I turned the screen toward her. We made it. She didn't even blink at the number, just smiled faintly and said, "No, Mom. You made it possible to fight." I stood. She stepped into my arms like it was the most natural thing in the world. There had been a time I thought she might never fully trust me again. Not after the lies, the distance, the fear I'd let take up too much room between us. But this felt like forgiveness. We drove down to Santa Cruz 2 days later. Not for move-in, just the campus visit. The make sure it feels like home day. She didn't ask me to come. I offered, and she didn't say no. That was enough. The sky drizzled the whole way down I-5. Not heavy rain, just a silvery mist that made the pavement shine and the trees feel like they were exhaling. Ella sat beside me with her playlist on shuffle, earbuds split between us, one in her ear, one in mine. I didn't talk much, just listened, watched her watch the road. As we pulled into the downtown stretch of San Jose, we passed a building I hadn't thought about in months. Mark's old office, the sleek glass one with the 2 blue logo and the lobby that smelled like money and men's cologne. I glanced at it, expected something. Anger, nausea, maybe even a twist of sadness. But all I felt was nothing. Clean. Free. Ella noticed. She followed my gaze. That was his place, right? Was. She nodded once, said nothing more. The campus was quiet when we arrived. Early spring haze still hung over the redwoods, and the ocean in the distance looked like brushed steel. We walked the trails together, her pointing out dorm buildings and the tech labs, me pretending not to memorize the way the light fell on her face in this new place. After lunch, she broke off for a student panel. I waited in the admissions courtyard, sipping coffee from a paper cup too hot for the weather. I pulled out my phone, scrolled back to the fund dashboard one more time. Another donation had come in. Anonymous. For the next Ella. I smiled, tears pricking at the edges of my eyes but not falling. Not this time. Because we weren't bleeding anymore. We were blooming. Voiceover. Soft. He stole from his child to feel powerful. She built power he'll never touch. When Ella came back out, she looked calm, steady, a little tired, a lot hopeful. She threw her bag into the back seat. "It feels like a place where I could start," she said. I nodded. "Then that's exactly where you belong." As I drove us back north, I thought about everything we'd been through. The secrets, the screenshots, the stories no one wanted to believe at first, and how a 15-year-old girl, armed with nothing but clarity and a borrowed laptop, outmaneuvered her father's empire of ego. Final voiceover, clear. My 15-year-old didn't just outsmart her father. She redefined what legacy means. Fade to black.